We saw together our first program. We wrote a program that will print a line on the screen. We printed "Hello World." Before we dive deeper into writing more complicated programs, let's take a look at the very basics in Java, the very basics of how Java source code files look like. All the code that we're going to insert inside a file will have to be inside a class, the top-level class. The name of the class will need to be exactly the same as the name of the file that we're saving this particular code. So if we have the class named robot, we will have to name the file robot.java. Inside that class, we may write several methods. We wrote the main method. This is an example of a method. However, it is also a very particular kind of method. And this is the case because the execution of our code, no matter how many methods we have in a class, will always start from the very first line of the main method. In our programs, we can also receive input from the user, say through the keyboard, and also output information to the user, as we have already seen, print statements, for example, on the screen. In order to receive input from the user, we use a class that Java provides to us, the Java library, and it is called Scanner. We will see more on the Scanner class in a little bit. When we are printing on the screen, we use one of the print methods that again are provided to us through the Java libraries, and they are all under system.out. We have already used the print line method in our Hello World example. A few more details on the syntax. Inside a Java file, we are not only allowed to write code, we can also write comments. What are comments? Text that will not be regarded by the compiler as code, Java code, but will be pretty much ignored by the compiler. Inside the comments, we usually put useful information about what a particular method does, for example, or how a particular variable is used in the code. We can have a comment go in one line, in which case we can use the double slash, or if we want the comment to be on multiple lines, then we will start the comment by the slash and an asterisk, and end the comment with an asterisk and a slash. Whatever is between those two symbols will be ignored by the compiler, will be regarded as a comment. Now, white spaces are recommended in our code, however, they are ignored by the compiler. They do not carry a meaning. They are there so that they make the code more readable. They don't carry any additional value. The semicolon, on the other hand, is always necessary to end or separate statements. With the curly braces, we group statements. For example, all the code that is inside a class will be inside the curly braces of that class. All the code that is within a method will be grouped by curly braces of the method. Take a look again at the way that we wrote the Hello World program. Some words in Java are reserved. This means that they have a very special meaning and we cannot use them for a different purpose. We cannot use them to name a variable, a method, or even a class. We will see several of these reserved words. For example, the word void, the word static. These are reserved words that we have already used, even though we don't quite understand what they do. We will see and we will explain little by little. Several times inside our file, on the top of the line that introduces the class and the class name, we will insert other lines, and those lines are import statements. Those import statements have a specific role, which is to say what other Java classes or classes that we have created and belong to different files might need to be used in our code inside the class that we are writing in this file. These import statements will tell the compiler where exactly to find those classes, what is the path that the compiler needs to follow in order to find where the specific class that we're pointing to is defined. Here is a table that introduces some terminology so that we feel more comfortable with a few of the symbols that are uncommon in natural languages but quite common in programming languages. We have already seen the curly braces, the open and the close curly. We will also see the angle bracket. We will also see the square bracket. If you remember, the open and close bracket we already used in the Hello World program when we wrote the main method. The main method had a pair of parentheses. Inside the pair of parentheses we wrote string, square brackets, args. The pound bag is also popularized because of Twitter as a hashtag. We also talked about the slash and how with a double slash we introduce a line comment. We will also see the backslash. We have seen the asterisk or a star, again in the context of comments. We will also use a lot the open and close paren, the parentheses. We use them always with methods or constructors. I know it's the words we have not introduced yet, Java terminology that again we will be introducing little by little. Then we have the vertical bar or pipe, as is known due to Unix. We have the dash and the back quote or tick, as it is sometimes called. You also see on your slide a reference on how to pronunciate specific symbols. Let's go back to the discussion on input and output and add a few more details. In programming, many things that you wouldn't expect are regarded as files. So we will be mentioning the standard input and the standard output. What are those? Those are streams of bytes that are coming as input to our program from, say, the keyboard, and streams of bytes going out of our program towards the user of the program, for example, towards through the screen. So these stream of bytes from standard input and standard output are regarded as files. Reading what the user gave us as input, reading this input file, requires some kind of parsing, some kind of processing. And why is that? We will need to convert the bytes that we read into some kind of internal representation. For example, we may need to convert the bytes that come as 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, and from that get a binary number, for example. Writing also requires some kind of formatting. We need to convert from the internal representation, the other way around, from the binary to a string of digits. Now, the complete input-output is quite complicated in Java, and we will be looking into it in much greater detail later, when we will actually be able to parse files in the sense that you would expect a file to be not a standard input or standard output. So be patient and we will come back to files in a later lecture. In this first Java program that we wrote, the Hello World program, we already used the system class. Remember how we printed a line on the display? We said system.out.println. So the system class has fields, has variables that can reference what we call the standard input or output. System.out is such a variable, such a field. Now in command line systems, like in a Unix cell, for example, these files, the standard input, standard output, can be the keyboard or the display. They can also be any file that we have in the disk. We can read and write to a file, or even other programs. They can be providing to our program input or output. The system.in will always be the input stream. System.out will be this variable that is related to the output stream. System.in is also a field variable of the system class.